Hello all you motion graphics enthusiasts. Today we're going to be talking about how to loop animation and then continue animating after the loop section. For those of you who are already familiar with DaVinci Resolve's Fusion page, the short explanation is that in DaVinci Resolve you can animate just about anything using the diamond icon keyframe button next to the setting. If you're editing using the Fusion page, you can create loops of any keyframes by opening the spline editor, selecting the keyframes that you want to loop, right-clicking, select duplicate, then select loop. Then in the pop-up box, simply type in the number of additional loop cycles you would like to loop for. This is a super useful trick for anything with animated repetitions and can save you a lot of time instead of having to go in and add in every keyframe manually. However, when you do this, instead of creating a bunch of new keyframes like you might expect, DaVinci actually groups the keyframes together that you want looped and creates a path. You are now unable to add new keyframes to the animation without affecting the entire previous animation loop path. For example, let's say you have a visual element that you want to animate moving to the left after doing a 3 loop cycle. Like that. Well, congratulations, now your entire loop cycle has moved to the left, which is not what you want. Or just doing random behavior like that. Different things happen. It's a bit of a mystery. The best solution that I found to work so far is simply go in and add in any additional animation keyframes that you want before right-clicking and adding in those loops. Because after adding in those loops, you can't add any more keyframes without potentially affecting and messing up the previous animation. If you're watching this and you're already halfway through your animation and you've added your loops, what you can try is selecting the keyframes that DaVinci adds and deleting those, but leaving your original loop keyframes that you want to loop so you can right-click and loop them later. So try just deleting the DaVinci ones, adding in your additional animation keyframes, and then right-clicking and looping. That has worked sometimes for me, and other times it seems to be too late and DaVinci has already decided some kind of path, and basically in that situation I just have to delete the entire node. In this case I was using a transform node, and get a new transform node and just start fresh and do it all over, unfortunately. That's the gist of it, and hopefully it can be enough for some of you to close this video and jump back into DaVinci making your awesome stuff. For those of you who would like to see what it actually looks like, I have made a couple of example videos that you can watch if you want to, so watch on for those. We're going to break this video into 2 parts. The first part is going to be a real-life example and a real project within context, and the second part of the video will be a very simplified breakdown of how to do it. For those of you who are new to Fusion, I'll timestamp that so you can just jump to that section if the first part is looking a little bit complex, but let's jump into it. So the project I have here today is a logo I've done for a photo studio in Tokyo called Image Echo Studio. We've got this logo mascot here called Imeko, and we're gonna give him some animation. So let's have a look at what we've got so far. Alright, so he's just walking into frame. And what we're wanting to loop here is the walk animation cycle. So he appears, this is the normal standing one, and then we jump into our Fusion page here. We're gonna start the walking animation. He walks closer to the logo, comes up to it. Okay, so we're gonna grab this first leg here. This is just a regular transform node that you find up here that you can, drag in like this. I've just renamed it T1 to keep my sanity alright and know where things are. So this is just the first leg, and it just kind of moves around in a circular motion. We're basing this off a walk cycle that we found online for dogs, so hopefully it's slightly more realistic than just moving back and forth. But what you'll notice is that when you're walking with 4 legs, unless you're standing still, there's never a point where 4 legs are touching the ground at the same time. Otherwise you'd be kind of like hopping. They're always, one's coming up, the other 2 are on the ground. And to get into the cycle, if we open up our keyframes up here and our spline, we can see we've got some loops. So to get into the loop, he moves out a little bit, moves the foot out a little bit. You can see up here in the inspector, he's going from the standard point of 0.5, just slightly moving out a little bit. And that's where the loop is going to start. So let's see how to get these loops very quickly. If I delete them, we're going to start at this point that's here. This is kind of in the way, remove that. And we're going to select all of these. Whoops, you can hold down Shift just to grab that last one. There we go. Okay. And right click and duplicate loop. You can actually just hit loop if we say set loop, and that will just loop on forever and ever. But we only want the walk cycle to last 3 cycles in total. So we click on duplicate and then loop. And then the pop-up box is number of loops. This is how many loops after the original one. So if we want 3, we're going to add 2 more to make 3 loops total. Okay, so these 2 loops are the copy of the original one. And if we move the original one, it affects these ones. Right now, you can see the leg is up in the air and we want it to come down to the ground. So if we go in here, in the end of the loop, and we add 1 keyframe, and let's put this back to 0.5, 0.5. There we are. Now, let's check the loop here. It's disappearing, it's coming in. What's going on? It's altered all of these previous nodes for some reason, and you might be very frustrated and think, what's going on? All I want to do is make it move a little bit at the end of the animation. But basically what's happening is these are not just copy-pasted points, data points. They're actually, it creates it refers to as a path, which you can actually see over, if you go over to the modifiers tab, you can see it's called path 6. And this 0 to 1 is how much typically how much it moves around the entire loop of the animation. And altering these will only just shift the entire animation. So that's not much use to us, unfortunately. Unless that's what we wanted. We wanted to make maybe a butterfly, and then you could use that to like shift the butterfly flying around or whatever. Okay, so here's how to solve it. We don't need to go into paths. Basically, it's very simple. Before you create the loop, you go into where the loop is going to end on this frame. You can see the frame number here, 260. You just go to 261 or any frame after that. And you add in a keyframe here. Let's make this keyframe 0.5, so it's going to center back up. Nicely back on the ground. Very subtle, but there it is. Where are we? Let's hit this. We go into the loop that we want to create. So select all of these, right click, duplicate, loop, and 2. Now let's check our walk cycle. Make sure that's all animating correctly. Oh, it is not. So I don't know what that's about, and I've already invested far too many hours to figure out what the next sudden hidden quirk is about that. So at this point I'm thinking it's probably just going to be faster to remake the walk animation from scratch. So that's what I did, and I did a bunch of calculations to determine where each foot would be at the end of the cycle, and then where it needed to go to wind down and finish the cycle naturally, going from a run to like a walk kind of speed to then a stop here. And then, yeah, so I just put in the points that I had already, you know, go to the keyframe, put in the digits of where the movement should be, and I put in all of the finishing keyframes before I even went and put the loop in, and that worked great. So yeah, if you can, I would recommend it to put in the other motion that you want to include after the loop before hitting that loop button, because it starts to add in a whole bunch of invisible paths and things and extra things that affect it which don't display visually. So yeah, I don't know if anyone from DaVinci Resolve is watching, but if you are, let's create like a thing that you can just copy and paste actual data points as if you were manually putting them in without creating extra paths and things like that. That would be super useful for animating various things and including repetitions. So there it is. Yeah, on to the simple version, which worked the first time. Cool. Okay, let's jump into an example of, let's grab a fresh one. So let's right click on here, new fusion, composition, sure. All right, and we're gonna drag that into the timeline. Let's give this a decent amount of room to play with. Put the playhead over the top, and let's jump in. So right from scratch, let's grab a, turn these off for now while we build it out. Got our media out. We're gonna grab a background here. Drag that over. We've got a black background. Let's make that something a little bit more easier to see. Give us a light blue or something. There we go. Cool. All right. And now we're gonna make another little box. So we're going to grab another background, basically just a square. Drag that. You can either merge it, grab one of these merge nodes here, and connect those up. And, you know, hook into there and into there, kind of thing. But we're gonna do it a faster way, which is grabbing that, drag it in there. That creates a merge for us. Now this is the green line is the foreground and the yellow one is the background. So now we've got a black box in front. Let's go to the image and let's make it, take off the auto resolution, which is just making it the same resolution as the time frame. And we're gonna take it down, and what should we do? Maybe like 900 by 900 square. Cool. And let's change the colors of that as well. Let's get maybe a nice soft yellow or something to look at. Okay, cool. Alright, so now that's our little background. Find out why I've got the square in the middle later on. Let's add in our goodest boy who we want to animate. So we are gonna get a transform node just from here. And we're gonna put that into here. So here we are. Here's our goodest boy ever, and our transform will let us move him around. Cool. Okay, so if you hit Shift Spacebar, you bring up the tool library, and if you type in, I've already typed it in, but here we go, transform, like that. You'll see there's a couple of different ones. This is for when you're using Fusion's own vector stuff. It's a bit more special. This is the regular one. You can see it's got the same symbol as the classic transform here, which is just to move around. And there's another transform here. There, put that in there. There we go. This transform is only within the frame. So you can see on the regular transform, if we move the center, oh, everything has been cropped. That is interesting. How about this one? It's cropped it to a certain size. So we don't need that. This one is just freely transformed, moving all around. Okay. Alright, so we've got our little goodest boy ever in the middle, and we're gonna do a little animation where he goes up to the corner and loops around the box a few times and then comes back to the center. And then from there you can move anywhere you want and continue animating different motions. Cool. So transform, click on that. We're gonna start at frame 0. Oops. And we're just gonna create a keyframe by clicking on this keyframe tool here. Now we're gonna go forward 5 frames, which you can see the frame counter here. That can be useful. You can click in there and type what frame you want to move to, if that suits you. And then, oops, you can click on this to move him around, but we're just gonna keep things simple. And because you want your loop to end at the same point that it started to make sure it connects, we're just gonna keep things simple and put in just 1 here, and then you can copy paste the crazy numbers over to the last frame. So it's not a big deal, but yeah. And then the middle is 0.5, so we'll make that 0. 5 more frames. And make this one 0. And then we'll go 5 more frames. And we'll make this one 1, yes. And then 5 more frames. For our last one, we're gonna take it back to 1. There we are, and there he's back. So if we look at our keyframes, but not really, because they're very small and difficult to use. You can do a select and control paste and things like that. We're gonna use the spline here. So we've got a transform path. You can click on that to show what's happening, and you can click on this button to bring everything into view. Let's zoom out a bit though, because we want to select everything. But we don't want to select this path, because that is this point keyframe here, because that's the middle. We only want to start the loop here at the top right corner. So we're going to grab all of these, and we're going to right click, and you can click on loop, which will just loop him forever, but we just want it to loop 3 times in total. So we're going to right click, oops, duplicate, click on loop, and then this is how many more additional cycles of the animated thing you want. So we already have one, we're gonna add 2 more to make 3. Whoops, click on put in 2 into the box. There we go, there's our 2 loops. And then you can see it stops at the end. So let's check our animation now. Goes out. Oh, it goes a little bit funky. Oh, did we select everybody? Let's check. Duplicate, loop, 2. There we go. There we go. He goes around and then he stops there. But what happens if we want to get him to go back to the middle? So let's add a new keyframe in here. And we're going to add 0.5 and again 0.5. Now let's check our animation. Oh, when you're ready. Whoa, what is going on? He is all over the place. He's getting a bit too excited. And you can see it's throwing out all these numbers way out of course on some of these. So he's just flying off the handle. We gotta bring him back. So that's no good. When we just wanna keep things simple. Alright, so the way that you can solve this is if we just go back. Before adding in the loops, if we go to where we know, I think it was at about frames, what have we got? We've got 20 frames of animation, so it's gonna go to about 65. So if we go to frame 70, and we add in a keyframe before we start the looping. So let's add a keyframe here at 0.5 and 0.5. So if we play that now, it goes around and then back to the center. That's all good. And if we select these points and right click, duplicate, loop, 2 loops, two more loops that is. How about now? 1, 2, 3, and back to the center. And if we want to add more keyframes after this, it's as simple as adding another keyframe. Let's say he's gonna fly up like that. And let's see about that. It doesn't affect the previous loop at all if you add in the keyframe before you set the loops. What happens when you set the loops is they make a path. Instead of just being copy-pasted points as the same as you would do if you would manually click in all the points all over again, it actually creates a path. So we can go over here to path. You see the name here as well, center path 1. It's created a whole path. And you can see that here. This 0 to 1 is just how far along the path it is, but it's not a lot of use to us. If we wanted to move the entire animation across a bit, we could either add another transform underneath and then, you know, have that and then transform that one over there, but you can go nuts and use this one too. Don't know if you'd want to, but the option's there. But yeah, it just affects the entire animation, even to the point of the new keyframes we've added. But yeah, there you go. So I hope that helps, and you can add in new keyframes to continue animating what you want to animate after your looping sections. So yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Alright, see ya!